This is Karl Rethinking Leadership for Forbes. Today I'm delighted to speak to someone with quite an unusual background. John Coates was a Wall Street trader for 12 years with Goldman Sachs and Deutsche Bank in the heart of the beast, then moves on to Cambridge where he's a senior researcher in neuroscience and finance, probably one of the few in the world at Cambridge University. So John, you spent many years working on Wall Street. Why did you turn to neuroscience to understand better the trading that happens in Wall Street in the city in London?
I was running a trading desk for Deutsche Bank during the dot-com bubble, and I noticed during that time that traders had started acting in a way that wasn't normal for their behavior. They were euphoric, delusional, they were taking too much risk, and the risk, moreover, had terrible risk-reward trade-offs. And as I say, these traders weren't normally like that. Normally they were a pretty prudent bunch. And I wasn't caught up in the dot-com bubble, but I certainly understood what they were going through, because I know that in previous occasions when I had gone on a long-term winning streak and was expecting a large bonus, I got this chemical high that was as powerful as any urge I had ever felt. And it's very difficult to control. And similarly, when you're losing money, you come to see the world in a completely different way. You tend to see conspiracies everywhere. And that too feels like it's chemically driven. I became increasingly convinced that our body chemistry was playing a huge role in shifting our risk preferences across the business cycle. And the more I looked into it, the more I decided that it was a hypothesis that I wanted to test. That's why I went back to Cambridge.
John, do you think when you look at the Great Recession you just went through that some of the work you've done really sheds light on how and why it occurred?
I think so, because the first stage of our research, we were looking at the molecules underlying irrational exuberance and irrational pessimism. We all know they exist. I mean, as long ago as Keynes, he was talking about animal spirits. But the fact that we've got these phrases which we know make sense, but we don't know we can't define them. I think there is a molecule of irrational exuberance and a molecule of irrational pessimism. And our original experiments were looking into the possibility that the irrational exuberance molecule was in fact testosterone, that it builds up in the bodies of traders as they make money. And as testosterone levels rise in your body, they start affecting the amount of risk you want to take and the way you assess risk. On the downside, cortisol levels, which is the most powerful stress hormone, also affects the way you think. So you become dramatically and irrationally risk averse under chronically elevated levels of stress hormones. So we think on the upside, during the bubble, these testosterone levels were making the traders insensitive to risk-reward signals, but also insensitive to price signals such as the rate of interest. And during the crash, it didn't make any difference if you lowered interest rates to zeros. They were so traumatized, they were price insensitive. And if you've got a financial community that at the peak of the bubble, in the pit of the trough, is under the influence of these very highly elevated chemicals, then they're basically price insensitive, and I think that means that monetary policy stops working.
I think most of my listeners would think about that as being a male thing. Is there a role for women in helping moderate the market in that sense?
Yeah, I think that's probably the most important policy conclusion that's come out of this research, that it's entirely possible that bubbles, not bull markets, but bubbles, where a bull market is just taken too far. It's possible that bubbles are a young male phenomenon, and one way of dampening that source of instability in the financial system is to increase the number of women and older men in the markets, because they have a very, very different physiology from young males.
So you gathered evidence to show that women and older men really do have an impact on the financial market?
To do that, you have to have a lot of women in the financial markets, and there aren't right now. Even with massive diversity pushes, I mean, I don't think there's more than 5% women taking risk in the financial world, starting from the trading floors to the asset managers. I think there's a great interest in increasing their numbers, but I don't think the banks quite know how to do that.